After that first night, Lyra felt a sense of hope she had not felt since leaving her kingdom. Daniel had not only shown kindness but also patience and understanding. He never rushed her, never asked too many questions at once, and never made her feel strange for being different. Lyra realized that this human might be the key to surviving in this new world, and perhaps even returning home one day. The next morning, the sun rose slowly over the valley. Its golden light spilled across the trees, casting long shadows on the soft green grass. Lyra woke first, quietly stepping out of her makeshift shelter. She watched Daniel as he examined the plants nearby. He was focused, careful, and gentle. She noticed how he moved with respect, not harming the small creatures around him. It reminded her of her father's teachings, wisdom in every action. "Good morning," Daniel said softly, noticing her standing there. His voice was calm, welcoming, and it made Lyra feel safer. "Good morning," she replied, her voice small but steady. She had learned to trust him, and it felt natural to speak. Daniel offered her some food he had prepared, a simple mix of fruits and grains. Lyra hesitated at first, unsure of the taste, but hunger won over fear, and she tried it. It was different from anything she had eaten before, but it was good. She smiled at Daniel. "Thank you," she said. "You are welcome," he replied. "We have to stay strong and careful. This valley can be tricky if you do not know it well." Lyra nodded. She realized she had much to learn. She followed Daniel as he moved through the valley, observing everything. He taught her how to identify safe fruits and plants, how to find clean water, and even simple ways to protect herself without fighting. Lyra noticed that humans were different from her people in many ways, but their cleverness and resourcefulness impressed her. Over the following days, Lyra and Daniel explored the valley together. Daniel showed her small streams where fish lived and taught her how to catch them using nets he had made. Lyra laughed at first, trying to mimic his actions, but soon she was as skilled as he was. They shared stories as they worked, laughing at mistakes and marveling at the beauty of the valley. Lyra began to trust Daniel completely. She told him about her home, the kingdom ruled by her father, and her adventures before she disappeared. She spoke of her father's wisdom, the palace halls, and the twin suns that lit her world. Daniel listened carefully, never interrupting, always asking questions to understand. "You must be very brave," Daniel said one day, as they rested near a sparkling waterfall. "You survived alone here for so long. I can only imagine what you have seen and done." Lyra smiled faintly. "I had to be brave, but I also had hope. Hope that one day I would return home. And now you are helping me. I am glad I met you." Daniel felt a warmth in his chest at her words. He had never met anyone like Lyra before. She was strong, intelligent, and full of curiosity. She inspired him to see the world differently, to imagine new possibilities. Together they made a great team. One evening, as the twin moons of the valley rose in the sky, Lyra asked Daniel about humans beyond the valley. She wanted to know if they would be able to help her return home, or if they had traveled to other lands. Daniel explained that humans had many skills, but traveling beyond their planet was rare. Lyra's heart sank slightly. Returning home would not be easy. Daniel noticed her expression and placed a comforting hand on hers. "We will find a way," he said firmly. "I promise you. No matter how far or difficult, I will help you." Lyra felt a surge of gratitude and relief. Daniel's words were simple, but they gave her courage. She realized that she was not alone anymore. Together they could face challenges she had never imagined. Over time, their bond grew stronger. They shared meals, stories, and even quiet moments of silence. Lyra taught Daniel some of her language, and he taught her simple human words and expressions. They laughed at the mistakes they made while learning each other's language. It was a strange but joyful connection, one that crossed the boundaries of worlds. Lyra also began to notice Daniel's careful attention to the world around them. He always thought ahead, making sure they were safe and prepared. He never acted recklessly, and he considered every possibility before moving forward. Lyra admired his intelligence and patience. She realized that he was not only her friend but also a protector, someone who could guide her in ways she had never experienced before. The humans and Lyra learned from each other in small but meaningful ways. Daniel showed her how to make simple tools, how to build small shelters that could withstand rain or wind, and how to travel safely through the forest. Lyra shared her knowledge of plants, the stars, and the ways of her people. Each lesson brought them closer, creating a partnership built on trust and respect. One day, as they sat atop a hill watching the sunset, Lyra spoke softly. "Daniel, I have been thinking. I need to return home. My father, the kingdom, they must be worried." "I cannot stay here forever," Daniel nodded, understanding the weight of her words. "I know, but we must plan carefully. Your world is different from this one, and we need a safe way to get there. I will help you, Lyra. We will find the way together." Lyra felt a deep sense of relief. She realized that with Daniel by her side, the journey home would be possible. The fear that had shadowed her for so long began to fade, replaced by determination. She was ready to face her father, her kingdom, and the unknown, with the human who had become her closest ally. The days turned into weeks, and the bond between Lyra and Daniel became unbreakable. They shared laughter, fears, hopes, and dreams. Lyra no longer felt alone in the vast universe. She had found someone who believed in her, who respected her, and who would stand by her no matter what challenges lay ahead. Meanwhile, far away in the alien kingdom, the king continued his search. He never stopped hoping that Lyra would return. Every signal, every report of strange sightings brought a flicker of hope to his heart. He had no idea that his daughter had found a human who would change everything for her, and perhaps even for the entire kingdom. As the moons rose high in the sky over the valley, Lyra looked at Daniel and smiled. "Thank you for being here," she said softly. "You do not need to thank me," he replied. "We are a team, Lyra, and together we will make sure you get home safely." That night, under the quiet light of the moons, Lyra felt hope and determination fill her heart. With Daniel's guidance, she had learned to survive, to trust, and to believe in possibilities beyond her imagination. The journey home would be long, but she was no longer afraid. She had an ally, a friend, and perhaps even someone more, who would help her face the challenges ahead. Lyra and Daniel prepared for the journey that lay ahead. Each step, each plan, and each moment of trust built the foundation for what would soon become an extraordinary return, one that would surprise the king, change the kingdom, and prove that bonds of trust and courage could cross worlds. Days passed in the valley, and Lyra and Daniel grew stronger and more confident. They learned to move through the forest quietly, find food easily, and stay safe from unexpected weather. Every day, Lyra thought more about her home and her father, the king. She could no longer ignore the call of her heart. She had to return to her kingdom. One morning, as sunlight filtered through the tall trees, Lyra sat by the stream, gazing at her reflection in the water. Her thoughts were heavy. She had survived and learned much, but she missed the familiar sights and sounds of her palace. She missed the halls, the gardens, and most of all, her father's presence. She whispered softly to herself, "I must go back. I cannot stay away forever." Daniel approached quietly, carrying a small bundle of food. He sat beside her and noticed the serious look on her face. "You are thinking about home," he said gently. Lyra nodded. "I have learned much here, and I am grateful for everything. But my father must be worried. The kingdom must be waiting for me. I need to return." Daniel looked at her with understanding. He had noticed the sadness and longing in her eyes for days. "I will go with you," he said firmly. "We will find a way back safely. You will not face this alone." Lyra felt a surge of relief. Daniel's presence made the decision easier. She knew the journey would be long and uncertain, but having him by her side gave her courage. She took a deep breath and nodded. "Thank you, Daniel. I am ready." The two of them began planning their return. Lyra described the kingdom as best as she could from memory. She told Daniel about the twin suns, the palace gates, the forests surrounding the city, and the rivers that flowed into the valleys. Daniel listened carefully, asking questions to understand the landscape. They marked landmarks and prepared supplies for the journey, including food, water, and small tools for safety. Lyra also shared her concerns. "I do not know how my father will react," she said quietly. "I have been gone for so long, and I have brought a human with me. Will he accept you?" Daniel shook his head gently. "I cannot know what he will think, but I will respect him, and I will respect your people. We will approach carefully. Honesty and patience can go a long way." For the next several days, they trained and prepared. Lyra practiced moving quietly and navigating difficult terrain, while Daniel taught her ways to stay calm under pressure and make safe decisions. They tested their sheltering techniques for storms and practiced finding food quickly. Each day strengthened not only their skills but also their trust in each other. Finally, the morning of their departure arrived. The valley was calm, bathed in the soft light of dawn. Lyra looked back at the small forest she had called home for so long. Though she had survived and grown here, her heart was set on her true home, the kingdom of her father. Daniel walked beside her, carrying the supplies they had prepared. "Are you ready?" he asked, giving her a reassuring smile. Lyra nodded. "Yes, let us go." They moved through the valley carefully, following paths Lyra had observed during her time there. They avoided steep cliffs and unstable grounds, using vines and rocks to guide their way. The journey was not easy, but Lyra felt determination in every step. She thought of her father, imagining the moment he would see her again. She wanted to show him that she had survived, grown stronger, and learned much from the human world. Along the way, they encountered small obstacles, a fallen tree, a stream that was difficult to cross, and unfamiliar creatures that watched from the shadows. Each time, Daniel guided Lyra, using his knowledge and patience to find safe solutions. Lyra began to trust him completely, realizing that he was not just her friend but also her partner in this journey. During the long walks, they talked quietly about what awaited them. Lyra told Daniel about the palace gardens, the twin suns, and the people of her kingdom. She spoke of the advisors, the palace guards, and the bustling markets. Daniel listened carefully, imagining the sights and sounds and learning how best to behave when they arrived. At night, they camped under the stars. Lyra pointed out constellations from her planet, explaining their meanings and the stories behind them. Daniel shared his own knowledge of the stars he had seen from his planet. Together, they compared the two skies, marveling at the similarities and differences. These quiet moments strengthened their bond, reminding them why they were determined to face the journey together. As the days passed, Lyra's excitement grew. She felt a mix of hope and nervousness. She thought of her father and wondered how he would react to seeing her alive. Would he be angry, worried, relieved? She did not know, but she was determined to find out. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Lyra stopped to rest. She looked at Daniel and said softly, "I have been gone for so long. I fear that my father may not recognize me, or worse, that he may not forgive my absence." Daniel smiled gently. "He will recognize your courage and your heart. And as for forgiveness, we will give him time. You have survived, grown, and learned. That is what matters most. You will return as yourself, stronger than ever." Lyra felt comforted by his words. She realized that the journey was not only about returning home, but also about showing her father and her people who she had become. She felt ready to face whatever awaited her, knowing that she had the support of a human who had become more than just a friend. The final part of their preparation was to decide the route to the kingdom. Lyra recalled the last path she had traveled near the palace. They needed to be careful to avoid dangerous areas and to approach the city slowly, so the guards would not mistake them for intruders. Daniel suggested ways to move quietly and observe from a distance before entering the main gates. Lyra agreed, understanding the importance of caution. Finally, the day of their journey began. Lyra and Daniel moved carefully through forests, over hills, and across streams. The valley slowly disappeared behind them, replaced by unfamiliar lands. Yet each step brought them closer to the kingdom, and Lyra's heart beat faster with hope. As they approached the outskirts of the kingdom, Lyra felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness. She could see the distant towers of the palace, shining under the sunlight. Her heart ached with longing, but she also felt courage. She knew that this moment, when she returned home, would change everything. For her, her father, and the human who had become her closest ally. Lyra turned to Daniel, her eyes full of determination. "Are you ready?" she asked. Daniel nodded, giving her a reassuring smile. "Always. Let's go home." With that, they continued their journey, stepping forward together into the unknown, ready to face the challenges and surprises that awaited them in the kingdom. Their adventure was far from over, but the decision had been made. Lyra would return, and she would not face her father alone. Part 4. The Return. The journey to the kingdom was long, but finally Lyra and Daniel reached the outer edges of her home planet. From a distance, the towers of the palace shimmered under the twin suns. The sight made Lyra's heart pound with a mix of excitement and nervousness. After so many years, she was about to return. The kingdom she had left behind seemed both familiar and distant at the same time. Daniel walked beside her, quietly observing. He could see the mix of emotions on Lyra's face: hope, fear, and anticipation. "We are close," he said softly. "Take a deep breath. We will approach carefully." Lyra nodded. She felt a lump in her throat but also determination. "I have to see my father," she whispered. "I have to tell him I am alive." The palace gates were guarded as always. The guards were alert and vigilant, scanning the skies and the lands around the palace. Lyra knew she could not simply walk in. They needed a plan. Daniel suggested they wait until the guards' shift changed, which would give them a small window to move closer without causing alarm. As they crouched behind a small hill, Lyra's thoughts wandered to the years she had spent away. She remembered the valley where she had met Daniel, the nights under the stars, and the many lessons they had shared. She realized that those experiences had made her stronger, wiser, and more confident. She felt ready to face whatever awaited her. Finally, the moment arrived. The guards changed shifts and Lyra and Daniel moved forward carefully. They kept to the shadows, moving quietly across the open fields toward the gates. Lyra's heart raced with every step. She had imagined this moment countless times, but now it was real. When they reached the gates, the guards noticed them immediately. Lyra froze, unsure of how they would react. The lead guard raised an alert, calling for attention. Daniel stepped slightly forward, raising his hands in a calm and respectful gesture. "We mean no harm," he said clearly. "I am Daniel, and this is Princess Lyra. She has returned." The guards looked at each other, unsure what to do. Lyra took a deep breath and stepped forward herself. "Father," she called softly, her voice trembling. "It is me, Lyra." The palace fell silent. The guards lowered their weapons slightly, surprised by the voice. Word spread quickly through the palace halls. The king, who had been in his study reviewing maps and messages, heard the name and felt his heart skip a beat. Could it be possible? Had his daughter truly returned? He rushed to the gates, his advisors following closely. When he saw Lyra standing beside a human, his eyes widened. She looked the same yet different. There was a confidence in her stance, a strength in her eyes, and a calmness that he had never seen before. "Lyra," the king cried, his voice a mixture of disbelief and joy. He ran to her, ignoring the advisors and guards for the moment. Lyra ran to him as well, and they embraced tightly. Tears filled the king's eyes. I thought I had lost you forever," he whispered. "I am here, father," Lyra said, her voice shaking but strong. "I have returned." Daniel stood respectfully to the side, bowing slightly to the king. The guards watched him carefully, unsure what to make of this human. Lyra noticed their tension and spoke quickly. "He is my friend, father. He helped me survive. He guided me and protected me. He means no harm." The king looked at Daniel, studying his calm and respectful demeanor. He saw the sincerity in his eyes and the care he had shown for Lyra. Slowly, his anger and fear melted away. He realized that this human had not come to harm but had been a true ally to his daughter. The palace advisors murmured among themselves, curious about the human and what his presence meant. The citizens, too, gathered near the gates, whispering in awe and amazement. They had heard stories of the princess's disappearance and had almost given up hope. Now she was back and accompanied by a human. The king took a deep breath and stepped back slightly, motioning for Lyra and Daniel to follow him into the palace. They walked through the halls, the citizens and guards watching silently. The king led them to a quiet room away from the crowd, where he could speak with his daughter privately. "Tell me everything," he said gently, taking Lyra's hands in his. "Where have you been? How did you survive? And who is this human?" Lyra smiled softly, feeling a mixture of relief and pride. She began to tell the story of her disappearance, her journey through the valley, and how she had survived with the help of Daniel. She spoke of the challenges, the lessons, and the bond they had formed. She explained how Daniel had guided her, protected her, and taught her much about the human world. The king listened intently, absorbing every word. At first he was cautious and unsure, but as Lyra spoke he began to see the truth. His daughter had grown stronger, wiser, and more resilient. She had survived not only with courage but also with the help of a human who had proven to be trustworthy. When Lyra finished, the king looked at Daniel. "You have cared for my daughter?" he asked softly. Daniel bowed slightly. "Yes, your majesty. I promised to help her and keep her safe. That is all I have done." The king nodded slowly, a mixture of respect and acceptance in his eyes. "You have done more than I can say," he replied. "You have protected my daughter and helped her return. For that I am grateful." Lyra felt a wave of relief. The tension that had weighed on her heart for so long began to fade. Her father had accepted Daniel. The kingdom had witnessed her safe return. The long years of fear and uncertainty were finally coming to an end. Over the next few days, the palace adjusted to Lyra's return. Citizens came to see her, bringing gifts and offering congratulations. The guards, once wary of Daniel, began to respect him as a friend and ally of the princess. The king held a special ceremony to welcome Lyra home officially, honoring her courage, resilience, and the human who had aided her. Lyra stood proudly beside Daniel during the ceremony, feeling a deep sense of accomplishment and happiness. She had returned to her home, faced her fears, and reunited with her father. She had also brought someone from another world who had proven that trust, friendship, and courage could cross even the greatest distances. That night, Lyra looked at the twin suns setting over the kingdom. She felt gratitude for the journey, for the lessons learned, and for the human who had become her closest ally. She knew that the story of her return would be remembered for years, not just as a tale of survival, but as a story of friendship, courage, and the bond between two very different worlds. Lyra smiled at Daniel. "We did it," she said softly. "Yes," Daniel replied. "We returned. Together." The kingdom was peaceful once more, but Lyra knew that her adventures were far from over. With Daniel by her side, she felt ready to face anything. The king, too, realized that the return of his daughter and the presence of a human friend marked the beginning of a new era, one filled with hope, understanding, and unity between worlds, and so, the princess who had once disappeared returned stronger than ever, bringing with her a story of courage, trust, and a bond that no distance could break. The kingdom had changed forever, and Lyra, with Daniel at her side, was at the heart of that change. The kingdom was alive with excitement. Word of Princess Lyra's safe return had spread quickly, reaching every corner of the land. Citizens gathered in the streets, cheering quietly as she and Daniel passed by, showing respect to the people who had waited so long for her. Lyra felt a mixture of joy and humility. She had returned not only alive but stronger, and she was finally able to share her journey with everyone. The king, Orion, watched from the palace balcony as his daughter walked through the streets, with Daniel carefully beside her. He felt relief and pride. The years of worry and uncertainty melted away as he realized that his daughter had faced every challenge bravely, and had returned not alone, but with someone who had proven himself trustworthy and kind. In the palace, preparations were underway to officially welcome Daniel. Lyra's advisors were cautious at first, unsure how the people would react to a human living among them. But Lyra spoke confidently, explaining how Daniel had guided her, helped her survive, and protected her during her time away. Her words carried weight, and slowly, the advisors began to see Daniel not as an outsider but as an important part of Lyra's story. The king invited Daniel to a private meeting in the palace garden. The garden was filled with fragrant flowers, colorful birds, and the soft sound of a small waterfall. Orion studied Daniel carefully, noticing his calm demeanor and the respect he showed for the princess and her kingdom. "You have done more than I expected," the king said softly. "You have cared for my daughter and helped her return. For that I am grateful." Daniel bowed slightly. "Your Majesty, it was my honor. I promised Lyra that I would help her. I only kept my word." The king smiled, a hint of pride in his eyes. "Keeping one's word is a rare and valuable trait. You have proven your character, Daniel. I welcome you to this kingdom not just as Lyra's friend, but as someone who has earned our respect." Daniel nodded humbly. "Thank you, Your Majesty. I will serve the kingdom as I can, and I will respect all that is important to you and your people." The king placed a hand on Lyra's shoulder. "My daughter, you have returned home, braver than I could have imagined. You have learned much, and you have shown us all the power of courage, patience, and trust." Lyra smiled, her eyes shining. "Father, I could not have done it without Daniel. He helped me in ways I cannot fully explain. He showed me the strength and kindness and patience, and he has been a true friend every step of the way." The king nodded thoughtfully. "Then it is only fitting that he stands beside you now, as an ally and friend of our kingdom." In the days that followed, Daniel was introduced to the people. At first there were whispers and cautious looks. Humans were rare on this planet, and the citizens were unsure how to treat someone so different. But Daniel's actions spoke louder than words. He helped with small tasks, shared knowledge from his world, and treated everyone with respect. Slowly, the people began to accept him, seeing that he had earned Lyra's trust and admiration. Lyra also shared her experiences, telling the people about the valley, the lessons she had learned, and how Daniel had helped her survive. The citizens listened with awe, amazed at the courage and resourcefulness of the princess. They began to see the value in openness, understanding, and trust beyond differences. The king decided to hold a special ceremony to honor Lyra's return and recognize Daniel's role in her journey. The ceremony took place in the palace courtyard, decorated with flowers and lights. Citizens, guards, and advisors gathered to witness the event. Lyra and Daniel stood together facing the king, who spoke with warmth and authority. "Today, we celebrate not only the return of my daughter, Princess Lyra, but also the strength of courage, friendship, and trust," the king declared. "Lyra has shown us all that bravery is not only in facing danger but in maintaining hope and perseverance. Daniel has proven that kindness and respect can bridge worlds. Together they remind us that unity and understanding are more powerful than fear and separation." The crowd applauded, cheering softly but enthusiastically. Lyra felt a deep sense of pride and happiness. She had returned home, faced her father, and brought someone from another world who had earned a place in the kingdom. The weight of the years spent away melted away, replaced by hope and excitement for the future. Over time, Daniel became a respected figure in the kingdom. He shared knowledge of human ways, helping improve technology, agriculture, and simple tools that benefited the citizens. He never sought power or recognition. He worked quietly, always alongside Lyra, always with respect for the kingdom's traditions. Lyra herself grew into a leader in her own right. She used her experiences to inspire others, teaching the young citizens the values of courage, curiosity, and understanding. She became a bridge between worlds, showing that learning from others could bring strength and growth. The bond between Lyra and Daniel remained strong. They had faced dangers, learned from each other, and navigated the challenges of returning to the kingdom. Their trust and friendship had become a foundation not only for themselves, but for the kingdom as a whole. The king often reflected on the events that had unfolded. At first, he had feared that his daughter's disappearance would bring sorrow and loss to the kingdom. Instead, it had brought growth, understanding, and a new sense of hope. He realized that sometimes, unexpected journeys could lead to the greatest lessons and the strongest bonds. Lyra and Daniel continued to explore and learn together. While Lyra took her place as a princess and a leader, Daniel continued to share his knowledge and experience. Together, they inspired a generation of citizens to be brave, curious, and open-minded. The kingdom thrived, stronger and more united than ever before. At night, Lyra often looked at the twin suns setting over the palace and smiled. She thought of the valley, of the journey, and of the human who had become her closest ally. She realized that courage, trust, and friendship could truly cross worlds. The princess who had once disappeared had returned, bringing hope, understanding, and a new era for her kingdom. The kingdom had learned an important lesson. Differences could be embraced, trust could be built, and friendship could create bonds stronger than any challenge. Lyra and Daniel's story became legendary, a tale told for generations about bravery, hope, and the power of unity. In the end, the alien king, who had once feared he had lost his daughter forever, looked at Lyra and Daniel and knew that his kingdom had entered a new chapter. One of acceptance, understanding, and a future where humans and aliens could learn from each other. And Lyra, with Daniel by her side, knew that her journey had only begun, but together they could face anything. The alien king ruled a bright and busy kingdom on a planet far beyond the stars. His name was Orion, and he was known for being wise, fair, and protective of his people. The king's most treasured jewel was his daughter, Princess Lyra. She was not only beautiful but also smart, brave, and full of curiosity. Lyra loved to explore the lands around her kingdom. She would often leave the palace quietly, wandering through forests, mountains, and even the crystal lakes that sparkled under her planet's twin suns. Lyra's curiosity was endless. She loved learning about new creatures, plants, and technologies. She often asked questions about the universe beyond their planet. The king, while proud of his daughter's intelligence, was also very protective. He warned her about dangers, reminding her that the galaxy was wide and not everyone could be trusted. Lyra listened, but her desire to see the world outside the kingdom grew stronger every day. One morning, Lyra woke before sunrise. The twin suns were just starting to rise, painting the sky in pink and gold. She felt a strong urge to explore. She quietly put on her traveling cloak and packed a small bag with essentials. Without telling anyone, she slipped out of the palace gates. Her heart raced with excitement. Today she decided she would travel farther than she ever had. The kingdom was alive with morning sounds. Citizens were walking to their jobs, children were playing, and merchants were opening their stalls. Lyra moved quickly through the streets, avoiding attention. She reached the edge of the city where the forest began. The trees were tall, their leaves shimmering in the morning light. Birds sang above her, and small creatures peeked from behind the trees. Lyra smiled. This was her favorite place in the kingdom, a place that felt free and endless. She wandered deeper and deeper into the forest. Hours passed and she lost track of time. She found new plants she had never seen and animals that seemed curious about her. She drew sketches of them in her small notebook, wanting to remember everything. Lyra's excitement was so strong that she did not notice how far she had gone. As the sun reached its highest point, Lyra came to a cliff at the edge of the forest. Below was a valley she had never seen before. Strange lights moved in the distance, and she felt a pull to explore further. Her curiosity overcame caution. She climbed down carefully, using vines and rocks to guide her way. But suddenly a strong wind blew and she lost her balance. She fell, rolling safely but far from the path she had followed. She looked around and realized she was in an unknown place. Lyra's heart beat fast. She tried to find her way back, but the forest and valley seemed endless. The sun began to set and shadows grew long. She started to feel fear, something she had never experienced before. She called out for help, but only the wind answered. She was alone, far from home, and night was coming. Meanwhile, back in the palace, the king began to notice her absence. Morning passed, and still Lyra did not return. He sent his trusted guards to look for her, but they could not find any trace. The king's worry grew with every passing hour. He sent messages to nearby towns and villages. He asked travelers if they had seen the princess. Everyone shook their heads. The king felt a heavy sadness in his chest. Lyra, on the other hand, found a small cave in the valley. She made a little space to rest. She was tired, hungry, and worried about what might happen next, but she reminded herself that she was brave and smart. She thought about her father and hoped he would not give up on finding her. As night fell, Lyra looked at the stars. They were different from the ones she usually saw from the palace. They seemed brighter, bigger, and more alive. She wondered if anyone else had seen them before. The stars made her feel small, but also inspired her to keep going. She whispered to herself, "I will survive. I will find my way back." Days passed. Lyra learned to live in the valley. She found clean water from a stream and fruits from the trees. She used her intelligence to build a small shelter using leaves and branches. At first, it was difficult. She missed the palace, her family, and her friends. But slowly she became stronger. She studied the valley and its creatures, learning what was safe and what was not. One day, Lyra noticed signs of humans nearby. She had read about humans from old stories and books in the palace library, but she had never seen one. She watched from a distance, curious but careful. Humans were small compared to her, with different skin colors and clothes. They walked on two legs, carried tools, and seemed to communicate in sounds she had never heard before. Lyra's curiosity returned. She decided to approach carefully, hiding behind rocks and trees. She wanted to learn about them without being seen. Soon she noticed a human who seemed different. He was kind, gentle, and curious like her. His name was Daniel. He was exploring the same valley, searching for plants and animals. Lyra observed him, learning how he acted and what he did. She realized he could be a friend. Daniel noticed something strange in the forest, a shadow, a movement. He carefully followed it and, to his surprise, saw Lyra. She froze, unsure if he would be friendly. Daniel raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "Hello," he said softly. "I am Daniel." "Are you lost?" Lyra hesitated but felt something in his voice that seemed honest. She stepped out slowly and nodded. Daniel smiled gently. "It's okay," he said. "I will help you." Lyra felt relief she had not known in days. For the first time she realized she might not be completely alone after all. That night, Lyra and Daniel sat near the stream, talking quietly. Lyra told him about her world, her father, and the kingdom she had left behind. Daniel listened carefully, amazed by her stories. He shared his own life, his home, and his dreams. They began to understand each other, despite their differences. A friendship started, one that would grow stronger with time. Meanwhile, the king never stopped searching. He sent more guards, opened more messages, and even visited distant towns himself. Each day without Lyra felt heavier than the last. He feared she was gone forever, and yet somewhere deep inside he hoped she would return. The stars shone brightly over the valley that night, as Lyra and Daniel planned their next steps. They both knew that the journey ahead would be difficult, but together they felt stronger, braver, and ready to face whatever challenges the universe might bring. Lyra's adventure had just begun, and little did she know that her return home would change everything, not just for her, but for her father, the kingdom, and the human who had become her friend.